Sorry that y'all are getting this so late. It's just been a really rough couple of days, but I put together or just edited last year's lesson plans around this time into something that's doable for distance learning. So I'm going to go over that. We're meeting on Tuesday, but this will just be the first two lessons. It starts a video about method acting and just different actors and different ways that they approached method acting. And then I'm going to ask students to reflect in the Jamboard. In this slideshow, I've linked mine, but what I went ahead and did, because this whole lesson plan requires a lot of Jamboards, I went ahead and made a Jamboard for each of us. So I made mine, and then I just copied and did one for my other class, one for Suniga, and then two for you, Camilo, because you have two classes. So your Jamboards are already made. You just need to grab the link from this document. And you'll see why here in a second. So I'm going to have them watch the video, and then I'm going to give them the Jamboard and give them the directions to do slide 1 and 2. So just as a warm up, I probably won't start the lesson right away because I haven't seen my kids all last week. I'll talk to them, just catch up with them. And then once I start class, I'll play the video, then have them reflect. I'll give them this link and say, okay, so at the first page, there's one question, just describe method acting in your own words, and then scroll to the second page and write a post-it note. Why do you think this works so well? Like read each other's responses, ask a few people to share out, and then talk about how basically then make the link that method acting is a form of empathy. And that's what we're going to be learning out over the next few days. And so empathy, oftentimes we talk about it as just an emotion or just something that happens, like, oh, I empathize with you, but it's actually an action. By definition, it's the process of understanding and attempting to share the feelings of another. And so by being it's a process, it requires actions. It's something you have to intentionally do. And that's what we're going to be learning about over the next few days. So we're going to do something using that same Jamboard. So go back to that link and have a timer ready, and you're going to say for each one of the scenarios that you read about, you're going to have 2 minutes to try to put as many post-it notes. So everyone's going to be on the same number 3. Everyone is on number 3, and you're going to all be adding post-it notes at the same time for each scenario. So here's a new student entering university in a foreign country. You're going to read the scenario, and you're going to answer these questions. One idea per post-it note. What are they thinking? What actions might they take? What emotions might they be experiencing? What are some of the comments that would come out of their mouths? And so you'll have them, basically you have the slideshow that goes through all 4, but you could also do it directly from projecting the Jamboard or having them on the Jamboard. After 2 minutes, okay guys, go down to number 4 and you have a different scenario. Same thing, everyone putting post-it notes on this board at the same time. Give them 2 minutes. Okay, you have a different scenario. Post-it notes. You have a different scenario, post-it notes. All right. Then you'll go back to bring them back and go back to projecting your screen. And you're going to talk about empathy mapping. You'll explain that an empathy map is actually a design thinking process. It's not something that is exclusive to social change. It's actually used in a lot of innovations and organizations and businesses. Apple, Google, Apple actually has an empathy or a design thinking component of their organization. And part of those design thinkers' jobs is just to understand the user. And that's the process of empathy mapping is what do our users say? What do they think? What do they do? How do they spend their days? What are their actions? What do they feel? What do they want to feel when they have one of their products in our hands? And that's how they design the different upgrades and changes and new products that they create. And that's a skill that we're going to be learning about, empathy mapping, because it's going to help us in designing our innovation for social change. So then after you explain that, you're going to tell them that they're going to go into breakout rooms. You can decide if you want to split them into breakout rooms of 4, or if you have a really big class and you want to do more, then you can do that. But I have it just right now set up for breakout rooms of 4. And you're going to use 7, 8, 9, 10. If you decide you want to do another breakout room, then you can just do that. But for example, breakout room would be 7. Breakout room 1 would be on this slide number 7, scenario number 1. Breakout room 2 would be scenario number 2. Breakout room 3 would be scenario number 3, and so on and so forth. And what they're doing in that scenario, what they're doing in that time is trying to pitch an idea for that scenario. However, their idea has to be based off of the empathy process. And so what they'll do is go back and look at some of the Post-it notes for the scenario. Oh, this person thinks this person feels that, this person says this based on what the class collectively brainstorms. And then they're going to put copy a couple of those Post-it note ideas into this chart, and then use the time to sort of brainstorm an idea of, we would solve this person's problem, or we would design this app or this invention or this tool for this person based on these things that are on the empathy map. So essentially, I'm going to kind of phrase it as like they're doing an interview and an investment firm is interviewing them. An innovation firm, that should say, an innovation firm. And so you have 10 minutes to come up with an idea, an innovation, an app, a club, an organization, whatever, to address the need of the user in the scenario assigned to your team. And so your pitch, you're going to come up with this idea, but in your pitch, you're going to create an empathy map with one Post-it note at least in each part of the map to support your idea. And so that's this screen that I was just showing you guys from the Jamboard. So you'll explain that to them. You'll put them in breakout rooms, give them 10 minutes, pop in and out of the breakout rooms, answering questions. And then you'll kind of end the class, bringing them all back and having them present their pitches or share their ideas. Then as the class ends, give them some time, or I think it's a good idea at this time as the class ends to just give an ISC update, just kind of let them know, listen, we understand that your project is going to be different than the years before. There's that reality we kind of have to accept right now with what COVID is. You may still be working directly with a company. Some folks might still do that. You will also have options to develop a really cool social change that might not be directly with a company. It's going to depend on each project. You are going to be required to impact a community. It's still innovation for social change and to measure that impact. But we're going to be developing out the more details in the next few weeks to make sure that whatever we come up with, considering the circumstances of COVID-19, is both realistic. You can do it. And it's not just hypothetical. It's something you guys can actually do. And that's also very meaningful for you. And so just kind of giving some time for them to update, exit ticket, write in the chat. So based on what we just practiced so far with empathy mapping, how might it be useful in shaping your ISC? You can have them write it in the chat or just share out however you want. And that would be the end of the first empathy class. All right, lesson 2, warm up. What are things you ask on an empathy map? Maybe have a couple kids share out or put it in the chat. The 4 things are, what is the user or community think, feel, say, do? What are some of the things that they think? What are some of the emotions that they feel? What are some of the comments that come out of their mouth or the things that they say? And what are the actions that they take? How do they spend their time? And then the next thing would be to ask students, what do you all remember about binary thinking? You can have them share out or you can have them put it in the chat, but what were your thoughts about binary thinking? And then after that, you're going to give them some notes. And so, binary thinking, empathy mapping actually helps us avoid binary thinking. So let's remember, add this to your notes. Well, what is empathy? It's a process. It's a process of understanding. What is empathy mapping? It's a design thinking strategy that requires a designer to get into the head of the user by asking these questions. And what does that have to do with binary thinking? Well, empathy and empathy mapping challenges the binary idea that people are one thing or another, that they're either good or bad, or skilled or unskilled, or motivated or lazy. Empathy mapping asks that we understand the deeper realities people live in from their own perspective and to dig deeper into why things are the way they are. And so that's what we're going to practice, continue to practice today. So for this second lesson on empathy mapping, we're going to do an activity in small groups called Empathizing with the Villain, based on what we're already learning and continuing to practice on empathy mapping. The assignments in Schoology, 1 per group. So you'll copy the assignment, which is in the folder I'm going to share with you guys with this video, into Schoology, and tell them that, you can do 1 per group. So once I put you guys in breakout rooms, just have one person make a copy and share it with all the members. And the steps are really clear in the assignment. You're going to think of a villain, and then you're going to empathy map that villain. What are some of their famous quotes or things that they said or other things that other characters said about them, based on how they behave, based on what you know about them? What can you infer are some of their values and beliefs? What do they think about the world around them? What are some of the major actions or events that define them? Some of the ways that they behave, what they do in their day, and what feelings do they have? And then based on this empathy map, you're going to do some solutions. It should be a detailed solution, an idea that has at least 2 to 3 steps. And basically you're trying to, instead of defeat the villain, empathize with the villain. use this space to describe what type of solution you would create to change the experience of the villain, not to just defeat them. If you had unlimited creativity, what information from the empathy map could you pull to create something that would actually help the villain live a better life? So, villain, empathize, solution. And then you'll bring them back. I'm going to randomize their breakout room so that they're with different people than they were just working on that assignment with, and ask them basically to share what they discovered or what they did. Who was the villain? What did they learn? What was their group's idea based on empathy mapping the villain? So essentially, you'll spend about 10 minutes in between warm up and notes. I would give about 30 minutes to do the villain activity, and then 10 minutes to exit ticket, close them out. And that's the end of lesson 2. Not going to go over lesson 3 right now. It's already done, but I will do that when we meet on Tuesday. Lesson 3, 4 of this cycle are already done, but I will talk about that when we meet on Tuesday. I just wanted to give you guys lessons 1 and 2. So this slideshow is here, and you're going to get that in the folder, plus your Jamboards, which is going to be in this document. You'll be able to find your Jamboard, which is in this folder. Slides, you'll get the link to your Jamboard so that you can give it to your students. So all of our classes aren't on one Jamboard because that's going to get really confusing. So I have my 2, Julian, you have yours, Camilo, I made 2 for you, as well as this assignment, which is for day 2. That you're going to put in Schoology for students to work in small groups. This is the villain, empathy mapping the villain assignment. Slides, Jamboards, assignment.